Greetings. This is Caroline Staten with Transition US, and I want to welcome all of you to our telesalon today. It's our Transition Street Sneak Peek. So thank you all for joining us. So Transition Streets is a tried and tested behavior change project where we come together with neighbors to implement simple, no-cost, and low-cost actions. These actions cut household energy use, reduce water and waste, change how we eat and transport ourselves, strengthen our neighborhoods at the same time. And Transition US has adapted this award-winning program from Transition Town Totnes in England for use in neighborhoods throughout the United States. And the goals for the participants of Transition Streets is to save money. Participating households have cut their energy bills by an average of $900 a year, and they've reduced their household carbon emissions by an average of 1.3 tons. That's per household. And just as importantly, they've built community. Neighbors have formed rich social bonds that go well beyond the project. So at this point, over 500 households have participated in the project, and there's several other countries that are also rolling this out: France, Belgium, Italy, Canada, Germany, Switzerland, Australia, to name a few. So our presenters today hail from a lot of different disciplines. We have our chapter editors for the U.S. adaptation of Transition Streets, and I'll run through their names shortly. And we have Mary Popham, who runs the UK's Transition Streets project out of the Totnes, England office. And she'll be providing an overview of the Transition Streets project and stories about the 500 households that have participated. So we'll get that in the beginning. And then we'll be going through sort of a taster of the various chapters. We'll first hear from John Frizey. He brings an engineer's problem-solving perspective to the energy section. And he's written for the Oil Drum on natural gas and energy in turn on investment. And he's the main chapter editor for the energy section, along with Tim Wolling, who's a retired electrical engineer, and he's joining us also on this call. Then we have Matthew Freiberg. He's completed his master's degree in environmental science and management, where he specialized in water resources management. And he's doing some work now with the federal EPA to build cases against companies liable for the remediation of Superfund sites. So Matthew edited our water section, and Diana Donlan edited the food section. She's the director of the Cool Foods campaign at the Center for Food Safety, which is a national nonprofit public interest organization. And Debbie Perry, editor of our waste curriculum. She's a credentialed teacher and worked as an education specialist at Marin Recycling for Marin Sanitary Service in San Rafael, California. And Sandra Hamlet edited our transportation section, and she has a master's degree in urban and regional planning and a BA in the environmental economics and policy, and she's been working on environmental planning in this field and is on the board of directors of Bike East Bay. So, and there's so much more I could say about all of these people, but wanted to get right into the bulk of our presentation today. So again, there's slides. The presentation is in a PDF form. You can download it from our website at transitionus.org, find the event on the home page, and click through to the presentation. And if you don't have it, if you're just listening, that's fine. There'll be a lot of great information for you. So, and this event will be recorded, so you can watch it at another time. So without further ado, I did want to turn it over to you, Mary, And thank you for joining us from across the ocean today. And yes, let us know what's happened in the world of transition streets from your perspective.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. That's lovely. Yes, my name's Mary Popham, and I'm here in Totnes in southwest England. So Transition Streets was originally a Transition Town Totnes project. It originated here, and we ran the first Transition Streets program here. And I've been involved with the project in Totnes from its early days. I wasn't involved right at the beginning, inception, but I initially joined a group on my street, and then I became involved in the wider project, and that was in early 2010 I became involved. And just to let you know that Totnes and district, where we ran the project, is so Totnes is a market town with a rural hinterland with about 13,000 households, people altogether living in that area. So just some of the things that happened in Transition Streets in Totnes on page 4, summarised here. This is based on some feedback we got from participants. So over 550 households have formed 63 Transition Streets groups. So there's about 6 to 8 households in each group, usually. The 83% of the participants have made some kind of improvements to their home to increase the energy efficiency of their home. They have, almost everybody said they wanted to go on meeting in their groups beyond the official 7 meetings. And over 90% of participants thought it would be easy, or relatively easy at least, to maintain the behaviour changes they made while going through the Transition Streets meetings. So just to summarise the project aims, this is on page 5. Transition Streets aims to inspire and motivate people to work together and support each other to reduce their reliance on fossil fuels. But beyond that, it aims to build social cohesion and strengthen the community's resilience in the process. So moving on to page 6, this slide just hopefully summarises neatly how it usually works. So neighbours recruit neighbours, and each group, as I say, involving usually 6 to 8 households or so. That's the kind of numbers that seem to work best. But each group meets 7 times, usually over about 3 to 4 months. There's 7 chapters in the workbook that each of the households get, and the workbook has lots of practical suggestions for actions households might take. So at each meeting, the group focuses on a different chapter, and hopefully has lots of discussions around that, and hopefully shares information and supports each other to make changes. And in Totnes, as I think Carolyn mentioned previously, the households saved on average £570 a year on their household bills. So that's their energy bills, water bills, food bills, transport bills, and so on, as a result of actions they took because of Transition Streets, and also saved 1.3 tonnes of carbon per household on average. So this is just the next slide show just a bit more information about how it worked in Totnes. So, Transition Town Totnes gives a lot of guidance and encouragements to households, puts the information out there, puts flyers out there, meets with households who are keen or interested in the project and encourages them to form groups. But it's the households themselves who actually recruit their neighbours and form the groups in their local area. And we think that is important, that they have that ownership and that we're not actually doing the door knocking and speaking to the neighbours for them. We then, once a group is formed, we then send a facilitator to their first meeting, and we bring the facilitator takes along copies of the workbook for each of the household. So the facilitator goes along to that first meeting just to help get things started, answer any questions, and also to take the pressure off the initiator of the group, because normally there is one sort of main initiator, but they don't want to feel under pressure or have an expectation that they have all the answers for everybody. So it worked well to send a facilitator along to that first meeting. But then for the next meetings, and then the introductory meeting is followed by 5 themed meetings, and more about those later. But the groups are on their own for those. They've got the workbook. They can use it how they want, but we don't send a facilitator, and the groups just organise those meetings between them. So in total, the groups meet 7 times, because as well as the introductory meeting and the 5 themed meetings, there is also a sort of a final meeting, a sort of roundup and feedback meeting. We, Transition Town Totnes, towards the end of the project, actually started sending a facilitator along to the final meeting where we could. That was because actually groups were telling us they thought that would be useful. And I think the reason for that was they sometimes were looking to do things beyond together, beyond the Transition Streets workbook, and they were looking sometimes for a bit of guidance or assistance with that, and sometimes we were able to help that. It also meant that we were able to gather more feedback from them, both the sort of formal feedback, but also more informal stories. And in terms of the sort of formal evaluation, we evaluated at the start, at the first meeting, and at the final meeting, and that enabled us to see what changes each household had made, and from that we could then calculate the average financial and carbon savings. Page 8, this is just a Wordle based on feedback, survey that we did of households involved, and the size of the word is proportional to the number of times people mentioned a particular word. So you can see that even though people were obviously enthusiastic that they'd saved money and carbon, what came across particularly strongly from participants was enhanced sense of community and better connection to their neighbours. The next slide is just a number of things that participants have said about Transition Streets in Totnes. I'll just read a couple of these out for those that can't see the presentation. There's a strength in knowing that other people are doing things as well. Everyone helps and inspires each other. So here on the next slide, number 10, a few secrets of our success, we think. So we started off with 2 pilot groups, and this really helped us develop the project in Totnes, because we learned a lot from those groups, but also we got stories from the groups, which helped us then promote the project more widely. And I think most of the other places beyond Totnes that have run Transition Streets projects have also done this and found that actually they can learn a great deal from just having a few early pilot groups. As I said before, we use neighbours to recruit neighbours, although we do point them in the right direction and then let them get on with it. The workbook, I believe, is non-judgmental with practical, useful actions, and it appealed to a diverse range of people in the town. We evaluated and measured the project from the start, and this really helped us in terms of telling the story, putting out publicity, securing funding, and so on. We did find that a bit of professional marketing input really helped. Some of our initial marketing material wasn't possibly particularly appealing, and we got better at that as we went along. We did get some grant funding, and as well as being helpful in running the project and to some extent creating incentives for people to get involved, it also helped create a story around the project and raise the profile of it. We had a good team with the right skills. Transition Town Totnes as an organisation was already very active before, so we already had a profile in the town before we ran Transition Streets. Although obviously Transition Streets was amazing in that it got many more people involved with the organisation. Doing a number of rounds worked really well for us because we could create a story around each round and a momentum, and so we actually gave people a deadline for forming Transition Streets groups in each round. It just, as I say, gave an extra momentum to the project. Well, I think there's going to be much more on the workbook later. So I won't go into that now. Other than to say, obviously we've shared our workbook with the US Hub, and that's now being adapted, which is great. This on the next slide, we've got the final version of the flyer we used for round one, just as an example of the kind of publicity we were putting out about the project. And for those of you who haven't got the presentation in front of you, the large title is "Cut Your Bills with a Little Help from Your Friends." So, Transition Streets groups in Totnes actually ended up doing a lot of things together beyond the action suggested in the workbook, because they'd come together through Transition Streets. they got on well, and they decided actually they'd like to take some further collective action together in their locality. So examples in Totnes include a community orchard being set up, a local community cinema, street parties, street swapping, and gardening days. It was also a great springboard for further community and energy action, because taking part in Transition Streets meant that households understood their energy use and were receptive to taking further action and supporting a whole range of initiatives. Examples in Totnes, and here these examples focus particularly on energy efficiency and renewables, but examples include draft busting projects, take-up of renewable energy technology, participating in open homes events, and supporting the energy-efficient refurbishment of the local village hall. So our experience is that Transition Streets meets many agendas, and I should say this is our experience both in Totnes but also from the other communities in the UK and overseas that we've helped where we've helped set up Transition Streets project. Those agendas include carbon saving, environmental awareness, fuel poverty, reducing the cost of living, community building, and capacity building. That's the end of my part of the presentation.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, it'll be interesting to see how we do in the U.S. and the adaptations that we will make to have it fit our populations here, and how we can share that also with many other countries that are involved in this. So thank you so much for sharing. And I just wanted to orient people again to this call. It's the Transition Street Sneak Peek, and there is a handout. It's on our website if you didn't receive it via email. If you go to our homepage at transitionus.org and find this event and click through, you can download the presentation. And I just wanted to pause for a moment here to see if there's any specific burning questions for Mary right now. We will have Q&A at the end, but just wanted to check in quickly here. And if you do, you can press 1 on your keypad. And I want you to be concise, because we have a lot of material to go through. So, Sherik, go ahead. Sorry, Super.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just had a question about what kind of marketing you did and what the grant funding was used for specifically, how it helped raise the profile in the town.
Okay. Well, we had the grant funding situation was slightly complicated by the type of grant it was, because actually we got a grant from central government from a program they were running around renewables mainly. So actually we did need to tie it into renewables, and it was particularly around solar photovoltaic, solar electric panels. So there were some. So we were obliged to spend quite a lot of that grant on grants to individual households to contribute to the installation of solar panels. But beyond that, what we used it for was some professional marketing assistance, and also some paying sort of part-time group, coordinators and sort of group support officers, I suppose, to just to help the groups get started and just to generally promote the project. So the type of publicity we did, I mean, it's just all the normal things. We got stories in the local papers. We advertised in the we had a front page ad in the local free paper that goes around to all the households or just about all the households in the area. We had posters. We used our own bulletin, which is quite widely read in Totnes. We communicated with lots of groups, other groups in Totnes, and encourage them to get their members to think about forming Transition Streets groups where they lived, and we encouraged people who got involved in Transition Streets to talk to their friends and get others involved. But yes, a lot of the normal things: leaflets, posters, and a lot of stories in the local press.
Thank you, Mary. I want to move on now to our chapter editors and hear from each of you, and we'll be following along still in the slides. And the first one is John Frizey, who hails from Minnesota, Minneapolis. And John, tell us about the energy chapter and anything else about yourself if you'd like, and just walk us through. I know it's a taster. It's not the whole chapter. The chapter is quite long, quite involved, and you've selected these few slides to walk us through. So thank you for doing that, and a big thank you for editing the chapter.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, Mary, for putting together such a wonderful program and being willing to talk about it. I'm an engineer, and I have a background in computer science, but my passion, living up here in the frozen north of Minnesota, the home of the polar vortex is how we kind of think of it lately, is energy and spending less on energy in particular instead of more. And so I was delighted to have the chance to be the chapter editor on energy, which really kind of focuses around saving energy in the home. And that begins in the presentation on page 17, spending less on energy. Some of the things that I just love about Transition Streets is how it really delivers on the promise of making the world better while improving your connection and community. And I think that theme really runs through all of the sections. And the way it shows up here in the energy section, interestingly enough, on the next page, see the light. It begins with very simple actions. These are actions that anyone can do, measuring how much energy you're using, understanding your energy usage, and then typically some kind of simple action that you can take that actually makes a difference in the world. The first one, see the light, is reducing the energy use, particularly of your lights, and switching to things like compact fluorescents or LEDs, or turning them off. And it has very helpful and practical advice on finding these lights and using them and selecting them and installing them. What's great about this is that it turns no one away. Anyone can afford a $4 or $5 light. Absolutely everybody can participate and feel they've made an accomplishment. And while we sometimes sneer at the value of changing our lighting, here in the United States, most of our electricity is generated by coal or natural gas, which is now gotten through fracking. And so every single light we change actually makes a substantial positive improvement. On to the next section, weather stripping. You see kind of the progression that the chapters have. They begin with a very simple action, and then they kind of move you to a little bit more complicated action. In this particular one, weather stripping, is about weather sealing around doors and windows, stopping those drafts and air leaks that are moving through in obvious places. And when the polar vortex hit last winter, I was finally motivated to weather strip our kitchen door, have its weather stripping torn out and put in some new, and it changed the temperature of the kitchen by at least 10 degrees. So I know this works absolutely. But again, it's something that everyone can do. Even if you own an apartment, you can weather strip doors and windows. The chapters then typically move on to something more complicated. So in this particular case, on page 20 of the presentation, we'd move to something like air sealing. Now, air sealing is one of the changes that we made from the UK version of the document of the Transition Streets program. And air sealing is finding those leaks in your attic or in your basement or in your walls, penetrations where you often don't feel the air moving, but actually leak most of the air that goes in and out of your home, especially around plumbing or electrical connections or other places that have been cut through all the way from the basement to the attic. And in my old 1908 house, I had several of these. They would literally blow air. You could feel the air move up from the basement through into the attic of the house until we sprayed them with foam and sealed them up. What's, again, kind of neat about Transition Streets is it has these actions like air sealing, which are a perfect opportunity for your neighborhood group to gather together on a larger scale, even larger than the small groups that are meeting in Transition, and to do things like air sealing workshops or going house to house and doing this kind of work collaboratively in your environment, in your neighborhood. And air sealing is also something that you could hire out professionally. So it's an opportunity to connect with professionals who are working on energy efficiency in your area. And so it's another excellent way to bridge. And I think the final thought I have in wrapping up kind of the energy section and reflecting on transition as a whole is this chapter is not controversial. You won't have an argument with the conservatives in your neighborhood about anything that's in the energy chapter. Everybody understands the desire to save energy and save money. You could take this to a church that's very conservative and they'd still love to see it, etc. And so those are kind of my thoughts about the energy section and why I'm enthusiastic about Transition Streets. And Carolyn, I'll give it back to you.
John, thank you. And I know, again, this is a really big chapter and it has lots and lots of tips from a lot of just great variety of resources and everything. And I just wanted to see, I know we have Tim Wooling on the call too, and I just wanted to ask you, Tim, if you have anything you wanted to add. You did you helped John at the end with the energy chapter, and just wanted to know if you wanted to say anything here about the energy section.
I don't have much to add. John did a good job of getting it organized, and I was just kind of doing the loose ends. And I enjoyed doing it. It's an interesting project, and I'm anxious to see the whole book be available. Great.
Thank you, Tim. Wanted to go on now to the water chapter, and Matthew Freiberg, please lead us through this and what excites you about it, and tell us anything else about yourself that would be important to know.
Okay. Well, first, I'd like to thank Transition US for inviting me to be a part of this great project, and Transition UK for building a fantastic model for all of us editors to work off of. I was telling Carolyn earlier this week how excited I am about this project, because the web is loaded with information and tips about why and how we should save resources in urban environments, but there are really very few, if any, free documents that provide the comprehensive toolkit for the everyday person in the U.S. And that's really why I'm super excited about Transition Streets. So I've selected about 6 slides here from the water section that represent the key elements and functionality that I hope readers get out of this section. So if we scroll to the first page, Spend Less on Water, this is the opening of the water section. It provides a reader with a perspective on the importance of water conservation really all over the country, regardless if you live in Virginia or California. It provides a baseline for the average American's daily water consumption, which is about 99 gallons per day, but that really ranges across the country. And then there's also a breakdown in the lower right-hand corner. You can see that pie chart. It shows where water is consumed in the average household. And that's for indoor water use. Nationally, about 60% of the water use is consumed outdoors, with the other 40% indoors. And from the pie chart, you can see that toilets and washing of clothes really consume the bulk of indoor water use on average. But something I always want to point out whenever I'm talking to groups about waters, that 13.7 on this, but about like 14% of water that's consumed by leaks. It's just pure waste. So the core of the water section walks the reader through each of the major parts of the household, pretty much following the sections that you see in the pie chart, and it offers key opportunities for conserving water in every part of the household. There's simple tips that everyone can follow, but there's also some guidance on how people can generally find free devices such as aerators and low-flow shower heads that are provided by some water providers. And then also certain places where people can look to find financial support to make some of the more expensive upgrades, like replacing your toilet or replacing your washing machine. And there's also additional links to other online sources of information, and I have a couple of books in there as well. So then we can go to the next slide, page 4. Similar to the energy section, Transition UK started with a focus on the importance of measuring water use, which I thought was just spot on, especially when it comes to water consumption. In the U.S., most research shows that people tend to greatly underestimate the amount of water they consume at home. So this section the water section opens and closes with a strong encouragement for individuals to measure and track their water consumption. So if you go to the next page, which is continuation of how much water you're using, there's a small table there that encourages people to track their water use weekly and to do it at their home. And there's a lot of stumbling blocks for individuals to be aware of how much water they're using. Water bills tend to come pretty infrequently, only every 2 to 3 months. And then online tools are pretty limited, especially when compared to electric consumption with the emergence of smart meters. And also water meters can be kind of hard to find, and older meters can be a little awkward to read. So we put a lot of onus on the groups to take charge and read their own water meter. So the next page offers a little advice on where to find your water meter, how to read your water meter, and then there's 2 figures here that show the 2 main kinds of water meters that you typically find in a household, at least on the West Coast. I hope it's consistent nationally. And this is provided by East Bay Mud. So then the next slide, page 26 in the PDF, jumps all the way to the end. So now all the groups have gone through each of the sections from toilet flushing to leaks in the household, showers, running your dishwasher, every major part of the house. And hopefully they've been tracking their weekly water use. And this, the calculator on this page is very basic, and it allows people to estimate how much water they think that they're using in each part of the house, and then compare that to what they're actually using earlier from that table earlier in the water section. So this provides you a really quick way to estimate how much water they're using throughout the house and track where savings can be made. And there's also a link to wecalc.org, which is a far more comprehensive water use estimator that also provides greenhouse gas emissions and energy consumption associated with the water use. It's a fantastic tool if you haven't used it before. It's put together by the Pacific Institute. And yeah, I highly encourage everyone to take a look at that. And then the last page offers a bigger picture of water conservation. After the groups have gone through and looked at what they can do in their household, sorry, I lost my place here. This section encourages people to look outside their household and consider the water that is embodied in the food that we eat and the items that we purchase. And the page closes with a few questions to get the groups thinking about the policy and economic issues that can lead to additional water use efficiencies that go beyond their home. That's what I have for the water section.
Thank you, Matthew. It's just so wonderful. And you mentioned that the meters might be different across the country. It'll be wonderful when we get feedback from groups using it in our pilots to see what else we might add as examples. But thank you so much for that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so thanks for the rich editing that you've done. Without further ado, we're going to move on to the food section, and that's Diana Donlin. And again, thank you, Diana, for doing this great work. And I know you have a lot of passion around food, and we've only taken a few slides from the food section. There's a lot here. And you wanted to select something more on the local food part of it, but there's a great wealth of information in the food section. So give us a little overview of the food section, if you would, and your choice of these slides, and walk us through it. And for those of you that might have just gone on the call late, we're looking at the presentation PDF, transitionus.org on our website. This event is listed, and you can click through to the presentation. So Diana, over to you.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, John and Matthew. I'm excited the way this is organized because I feel that food is a perfect segue after covering energy and water. As we know, food can be a great connector for communities, so I wanted to spend my 5 minutes going over some tips for buying local and seasonal foods. And if you look at slide 29, talks a little bit about food miles and consolidation of the food system and the centralization of the food system. And that has, that's had a lot of consequences for our communities. We've seen the demise of local businesses and local independent grocery stores. But then there have been some hidden factors that we haven't seen so much when you have your food supply that's very consolidated and you're depending on these great big box stores. You lose heirloom seed varieties and you lose sort of regional flavors and resiliency because these big concerns that grow food on an industrial monocropping scale, they're looking for efficiency. They're also looking for things that travel well and pack well, and so they're not concerned about flavor and variety the way we might be. So buying local food is such an opportunity to build community, to build resilience, and it's a great sort of kickoff for these transition streets. You can be doing your energy efficiency and then have a community picnic or something. So if we go on to, at the bottom of the slide, yes, if some food cannot be produced locally, of course, and trade is a very important aspect, and we're not saying that you need to be perfect in this, but there's a lot to be gained by supporting local food so that you're building this community resilience and independence, and then you might be able to trade from one region to another for things like coffee and bananas and things that maybe only grow in certain climates. Moving on to the next slide, number 30, you have a lot of benefits for supporting local agriculture. Not only is it healthy and fresh, The quality is better because the nutritional level of fresh produce is higher. It loses nutrients as it ships great distances. Local food can be cheaper when it's in season, and that's why in the chapter we have local and seasonal together. And this program is a great opportunity to underscore the fact that foods do change with the seasons, that you aren't supposed to be eating cherries year-round, or pumpkins year-round for that matter, that they have distinct seasons, and you're made more aware of that when you're buying locally, because if it's in season, it's available. If it's not in season, it's not available. And again, there are multiple nutritional and health benefits to you as a person eating in season, because you're having more vitamin C or whatever it is to fight off a cold, for instance, in the winter. So one way that you can buy locally produced food is by supporting community-supported agriculture in the United States. That's often referred to as a CSA, and that's a subscription service where they often deliver to your house or to a centralized location via a box. You get usually an assortment of what's in season along with recipes. And then you pay, it depends, but when I've had a CSA before starting to grow a lot of my own food, it was about $25 a week. And you don't have to go whole hog with buying local. You can start, by just maybe supporting one specialty shop in your town and allocating those food dollars to that local concern, away from the Target or away from the Walmart, away from these great big producers that really are taking a bigger and bigger percentage of our food dollars. You can go to your local stores and ask them if they're stocking local produce, and if they're not, you obviously can ask them to make more of an effort to do that. Oftentimes, big grocery stores won't do that because small farms just can't, they don't have the scale that big producers do, so it's a lot more effort for the grocers. But if you ask them to carry local food, they'll certainly want to keep their customers happy and will probably accommodate you. If you've forgotten which foods are in season when, you can, there's some great guides that this platform links to that will tell you, so you could put in Minnesota, what's in season in Minnesota in late October, and you'll get a snapshot. There are also opportunities, of course, eating out and to ask local restaurants to carry local food, and more menus are providing that kind of detail that shows you where your food is coming from. And if the restaurant doesn't say, you can always ask, say, who grew this cauliflower? Finally, local currency. Certain communities have local currencies, and that keeps money circulating within your community, and that has a lot of benefits. Not all communities have their own local currency, but if you do, it's great to spend it on local food. So the next slide, number 31, gets into more detail on the community-supported agriculture model. In the United States, it's been very exciting to see the growth of farmers markets around the country. The USDA tracks those numbers, and they've just been going up, and now we even see more and more year-round farmers markets and not just seasonal farmers markets. So that's terrific. It's a great opportunity to meet people growing things in your area, to talk to them, to swap things if possible. So this gives some local options near Sebastopol, California, a very vibrant town with a lot of local farms. But as this Transition Streets workbook is rolled out across the country, obviously those options will be different. We also have links to benefits of eating organic, and I just want to spend a minute on organic because sometimes local is seen as being in competition with organic, and at Center for Food Safety we like to put them together, recommending that people buy local and organic. We don't mean support your local industrial agriculture, GMO corn that maybe is making Coca-Cola. That's not the spirit behind buying local. The spirit behind buying local is the smaller, diversified, if possible, organic farms that are using practices that are regenerative and that use less fossil fuels, that build soil, which then retains water. So you're really making an investment with your food dollars in the whole system. And I think that there's been a very strong push to brand organic as elitist, as something that's sort of selfish and for the well-to-do. But if you look at it a different way, investing in organic is really investing in the commons, because you're investing in clean water. Obviously, they're types of pesticides, but they're not the synthetic pesticides in organic. You don't have the nitrogen fertilizers, which off-gas tremendous amounts of GHGs. You're building the soil, which then can hold water and make us more resilient in times of drought, as we're seeing here in California. So there are multiple community benefits to eating organic, and when things are in season, the prices do come down. So moving on to the next slide, number 32. Here's the statistics I mentioned on the USDA tracking the farmers markets. And for those of you that don't have the slides in front of you, I'll read them. So USDA started tracking the number of farmers markets in the United States in '94, and there were 1,755 farmers markets across the country. In 2014, that number had grown to 8,268. So that really shows you the growth of the food movement across the country, which is really just so encouraging and exciting for so many reasons. There also, if you are adventurous and it's the right time of the year, obviously these things are seasonal, but there's a lot of pick your own options. Right now, apples are in season in most parts of the country, and apple picking is a great community event. What a wonderful way to get to know your neighbors, to put up a flyer and say, hey, let's all go on a community apple pick, and then you could come back and all make applesauce together. Applesauce is really easy to make and very satisfying and keeps a long time. So, other parts of the country, say Maine, you could be doing blueberries in August. In the Midwest, you could be seeking out organic corn to eat at a you-pick spot. So here we highlight some local farmers market stands, pick your own. And then lastly, a really fun thing to do as an activity, maybe for a family or a group of neighbors, or as the Transition Streets group gets to know each other, is perhaps organize a farm tour to one of your local farms and get to know, farming is hard work, and get to appreciate what a farmer's life is like, how the seasons impact them, what it's like when there's too much rain, when there's not enough rain, how you as a community member might be able to help them weather that by buying a subscription to their farm so that they know they're going to have a secure source of income on a regular basis, and perhaps cut out that middleman, which would bring down the price for you and also have benefits for the farmer. So thank you so much, Transition Streets. This is really exciting. As I think it was Matthew said, it's so great to see this workbook available for free to the public, where they can start connecting these dots. And just quickly before I sign off, I would like to, for people that are interested in the food and climate issue, we did issue a report this spring on food and climate. It's very user friendly, and it's written for a general audience. You can find it on the Center for Food's website, and it's called Food and Climate, Connecting the Dots, Choosing the Way Forward, and it goes over some of these things in much greater detail. Thank you so much, Caroline.
Thank you, Diana. Obviously, a lot of passion in food, and I really appreciate what you're bringing to this work, and wanted to mention that also a lot of transition groups do crop swaps, too, so that doesn't cost any money, and often people that come with with nothing to swap, leave with a lot of produce as well. So that's a good thing to do. And wanted to move quickly, and we're together for another about 15 minutes. So ask the next two presenters to be quite concise so we can get on to questions and answers. And for those that do have questions, we'll be taking those at the end here. So we'll go ahead now to the waste section, and Debbie, tell us all about it.
Oh, hello, everyone. Thank you, Caroline. I would just also like to echo that I'm so excited to be part of this really exciting program. And I'd like to add to my bio that my family and I, for several years, have been attempting to live a zero-waste lifestyle, which means that we're trying to send as close to zero to the landfill as we possibly can. And some people don't really think much about their garbage. This is something that is less on people's mind most often. So as mentioned on this first slide that we see as the introductory page, it's really important to be aware of the fact that there really is no actual away. The garbage has to end up somewhere, whether it's buried or burned, both of which increase pollution and climate change. So if we move on to the next slide, which looks like it needs a little adjustment here in one part.
It does. I noticed that.
Yeah, this is the beginning of the wasting away section, and this explains how much waste we really make in the U.S., and it's surprising to some people, and why it's so important that we really reduce how much we make. It explains that recycling is definitely important. We hear a lot about recycling, but we really need to remember that buying less new stuff in the first place is the best way to slow down pollution and climate change. And so part of the curriculum is providing Annie Leonard's short and simple but really entertaining video, The Story of Stuff. And some of you may have seen this. It's online. But it does a great job of explaining how overconsumption is really at the root of the waste problem. And then this 20-minute DVD, I believe, will be provided to your group along with some discussion questions as part of this chapter. So as we move on to the next, number 35, hopefully after the introductory slides in the video, your group will be really excited and inspired to think of all the creative ways to reduce and reuse stuff. And this slide will give you a very good start to many ideas, and it really just becomes a lifestyle. When I go to throw something in the garbage, I hold that thing and look at it and say, could this be used for something else? Could I get somebody else to be able to reuse it? Or maybe I shouldn't have bought this in the first place if it's not recyclable. So hopefully your group will be inspired to come up with more creative reuse ideas, and this saves a lot of money as well, as all of the ideas in the previous chapters have. So the next slide is a little bit about recycling. There's a lot of information about recycling that I didn't choose to show here, but most groups are hopefully living in areas where you have curbside recycling available in your community, which makes recycling much more easy and convenient. And local guidelines are always different, so that will be provided as the transitions team contacts your local providers and gets that info integrated into the slideshow. But some areas, not everywhere in the United States, as surprising as this seems to us in the Bay Area here in California, not all areas have recycling that gets picked up curbside. And so I thought it would be an interesting thing to be able to provide some extracurricular activism if your group is really inspired to find out how you could get a curbside recycling program started in your area. There's quite a bit of information given on the website of the EPA, and so there's some links to that as well as some steps just to get you started, some things to think about. And there's some case studies, and they take you through step by step through the process at the EPA's website. So that's provided, and that would really be going beyond just your lifestyle change to really making a big change in your area. So as we move on, there's a little bit more about recycling in this slide. And as the graphs show here, these are three ways of looking at how much of what we are putting in what we're throwing away, basically. And a huge percentage, it varies between 25 to 35%, so I usually say about a third of what you're throwing away could have been composted. So another form of recycling used for organic or biodegradable waste is composting. And so there's a whole section on home composting tips, which I don't think I included it here, but it's a very thorough section with do's and don'ts that explains all the things that you need to know about composting at your home, which is a great thing to do if you have kids especially, because it's great for them to see the way that nature transforms the waste into something useful right there in their home. You could build worm bins. It explains all that in the slides. And it's something that when you are composting, you'll see your waste that goes to landfill goes way down, like I said, about a third at least. And some areas have curbside collection of their compost. Here in the Bay Area, many of the communities do. So that really increases your likelihood of reducing waste, because they'll take all your food soil papers, which are compostable, and all the meat and bones and animal products as well. So you're a little bit more limited in your backyard, but you can still do such a huge amount of reducing waste by composting, and the curriculum really goes into that. Let's go on to the next slide. As you're going through and doing all these different things with your group, there's a chart that will really help you to track it and keep yourself going on it. And hopefully you're going to be inspired to reduce your waste, not only to save money, but to help the earth. And my family now, we've been doing this a few years. We've got my husband and I and my teenage son. We're down to about one bag, grocery bag, brown bag, of landfill garbage per month, which, sounds pretty impressive considering how much waste most Americans make these days. But there's a family in Mill Valley in Marin County that's down to, they're a family of 4, and they make about one jar, like a tomato sauce jar, size of landfill garbage per year. So there's some, at the very end of the slideshow of the curriculum for waste, there's the links to go to check out some information about that family. She's the woman that's the mother, has vlogged a lot and been on various shows, and there's a lot of limelight put on them, so you can read how they've done that. And also there's some movies if you really want to get into the whole issue for your group or just by yourself too. There's a lot of links to various movies. You can watch some of the trailers, see if any of them look good, full-length feature films all about garbage. So I hope you'll have fun with this section, enjoy learning how to reduce your waste and save money and help the earth. And it feels really great, even if you're taking baby steps, to know that this really is something that you can do, and it's not really all that hard. So thank you so much.
Debbie, thank you so much. That was wonderful, very, very exciting. And wanted to move forward now with Sandra Hamlet, who has edited the transportation section. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Carolyn. And I know we're short on time, so I'll try to be as succinct as possible. But I am grateful for both the Transition UK and US for developing this workbook to help people not only be able to respond to and reduce their impact on climate change, but also to build community. So I think that's really important. And kind of as the closer to the presentation of these different modules, transportation, especially in California, is one of the greatest sectors for greenhouse gas emissions. Nationwide, it tends to be energy related, but in California, transportation is our greatest sector for greenhouse gas emissions. And so this module is really designed to give people tools first to really understand the impact that their choices for transportation make in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, and also public health. I think bicycling and walking not only have environmental benefits, but they also have health benefits. And so there's a lot of, on the first slide, which is 40 in the presentation, there's a lot of background information about the impact of fossil fuels on both the climate and then later on in the module on our health. But interestingly enough, the average car trip in the U.S. is under 10 miles, and really, any trip that's under 5 miles is something that people could easily consider as one that they could take on via bicycle. And under a mile, it's actually a lot of times more convenient and quicker to actually just walk to that destination. And so on slide 40, there's some information about the amount of CO2 that is generated per different mode of transport. And these are all, this of course, doesn't account for bicycling and walking, which, of course, are virtually produce, zero CO2. And so the next slide kind of previews some of the ways that people can reduce their greenhouse gas emissions in their transportation choices, including guidance on how to drive more fuel efficiently, and some suggestions on when to use your bike versus other forms of transportation, and kind of the benefits of walking and transit, as well as ride sharing and alternatives for flying. And then also being creative about the way that people recreate, so that they're looking more locally to kind of explore their communities more deeply versus maybe, going off to a far off exotic locale, which, generally has greater greenhouse gas emissions associated with air flight. So there, not only, on the next slide, it outlines how fuel-efficient driving can not only save fuel but also money. And Carolyn, am I hearing that? How are we doing on time?
Just move through it as quickly and succinctly as possible. Thank you.
Sure. And so there's several tips for on the next slide for increasing fuel efficiency, and a lot of these have to do with making sure that your car is properly maintained, and also driving at reduced speeds that are more fuel efficient. So the next slide gives some information on bicycling and how that's beneficial both in terms of reducing greenhouse in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and for public health reasons, and then also cost. It can be very cost effective to use a bicycle instead of a car. And there are some concerns around safety, but if you're well prepared, those safety issues are not too much of a barrier for bicycling. So that's just kind of a preview of what is to follow in the full module. And from there, I will turn it back to Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Sandra, and thank you all the chapter editors. I wanted to open it up for questions, so press 1 on your keypad. If you have a question, ask you to keep it, again, pretty succinct. And just wanted, while people are doing that, wanted to let you know some next steps for us. We're completing a promotional video that will be available for people to use. We're completing the curriculum via these wonderful chapter editors. We'll do some pilots across the country and get some data back to just tighten up everything. We need some help with setting up data collection, monitoring, evaluation, if any of you are knowledgeable, have interest or ideas about that. And then we'll be doing also a series of online teleseminar trainings. One is about the workbook as the resource and the recruitment portion, how you get people involved, the communications, marketing, how it fits into the wider transition activity. That will be one. Another one is how to make it as successful as possible in your area, really helping you to detail out a project plan, the types of skills you need, what's a good budget, what are some fundraising strategies. You can do it for free, but there's help if you can get some financial support, business sponsorship, etc. That'll be another section. Putting it into action, just really fine-tuning sort of a lot of different aspects so that you can really make it successful, and then also ideas of what you might do after Transition Streets. So those are some of our next step, and as always, your help and expertise so appreciated. So here we go. Catherine Sutton, go ahead.
Hi, Caroline. I have several questions about the different sections, and I'm wondering if I could just send an email because it would just take up a lot of time.
You certainly could, and I'll forward those to the chapter editors or to us. Or
some of the things I didn't hear mentioned was grey water collection, rainwater collection as in the ground, and around recycling, the things that are supposed to be recycled but really aren't, or that are used, they use up an awful lot of energy to turn into something that isn't as useful, like plastic.
Well, this was just by no means the full extent of
just
the
checking to see if those
chapters. Yeah, each chapter is about 20 pages or something, or sometimes more. And I can tell you that rainwater catchment and grey water is a portion of the water chapter, and there is more on recycling and toxics. So that is in there. But please do send an email, and I'll forward that around as needed. So thank you. Linda Curry, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just have, I'm wondering, maybe you guys have already built this into the program, but especially having tips for people who live communally, like in apartment complexes. Sometimes those folks are not seeing water bills or even possibly energy bills, or it's a little trickier to monitor how much waste they're producing. So I'm just wondering if there are tips that will be very helpful to folks, especially in apartments.
Any of you chapter editors, or Mary, do you have any comments? And let me know if you press 2 on your keypads. Matthew, go ahead.
Hi, Linda. Thanks for the great comment. I think that one of the challenges with developing these sections is that it's designed for a national audience, and I think that that's something that needs to be addressed with the water section, making some recommendations specifically for apartment living in households that don't have water meters. So I'll definitely make sure that is well addressed in the water section in the final version.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. And again, this is sort of a national template, and there'll be pages in it to localize it specifically. But that kind of comment, and Linda, I know you've done a great deal of work in this kind of thing, so we'll really hope that you can help point the gaps out to us so that we make sure to address it. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it.
Jamie Edmonds, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Calling from San Diego. Was wondering if there's a 501c3 already existing for that, or if there's anything in the U.S. thinking about setting that up. Reason I ask is that our local county has community development grants that could help fund some of the printing, say, of the workbooks or things like that. They can only give them to registered 501c3s. I don't know if that possibility has been addressed.
Jamie, it's great to hear that. Transition US is a 501c3. I know that some of the transition initiatives across the country are either fiscally sponsored, so have that ability, or are 501c3s themselves. Would love to talk with you further, though, to see how we can, to see how that possibility could benefit groups around the country. So. I'm going to contact you.
Yeah. I'd be happy to take point on that here in San Diego County. I have one of the 5 county supervisors is very progressive, very active, and really looking for ways that he can use the county monies to, because we're in our 7th year of drought, and we have unique challenges in Southern California to other places that are working on how to get rid of water, for instance. He would be very interested in learning more about this. And I'm going to be retiring the end of March, so I'm really looking forward to having more time to devote to something like this. I've done a lot of these things in the manual already, but I always can do more and spread the word. So please do get in touch.
Thank you, and it'd be great to have some good samples of government involvement early on. So really appreciate that. And Sari Stuber, go ahead.
Hi. You covered this a little bit, I think, but I was impressed with all the links in the food section, but I was wondering if we would have a chance to use our own local links
yes.
for each section.
Yes,
okay.
there'll be lots of opportunity in all of the sections to add local links, and a lot of examples that are from different parts of the country, so you can see the variety of different ways that these things are being handled. But yes, especially with local food, the examples have to be local. So that was just sort of showing what you might put in your own version of it.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, and those are the questions, everyone. I wanted just to see if any of our presenters had any closing comments that they really, really wanted to make. And if you do, press 2 on your keypad so I can call on you. And if I don't see any, I'm going to adjourn us. I'm not seeing anything. So I want to thank the chapter editors. You are amazing and just have really done stellar work. And Mary, thank you for joining us from the UK today, and for doing such great work and putting such an amazing program together that we can piggyback off of. And really looking forward to seeing how we can pilot this in your area. So let us know at transitionus.org.